I think that in introducing every one of the 18 movie musicals that we've seen so far in this series, I've used the word classic every single time. And I meant it, even though Busby Berkeley's 42nd Street is a very different kind of classic from Vincent Minnelli's Meet Me in St. Louis, our last film before the holidays. Well, that put me in a Minnelli state of mind. And I thought, let's change things up a bit and show you a Vincent Minnelli film musical that's not a classic. The director's 35th and final movie, On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, released by Paramount in 1970 and starring Barbra Streisand and Yves Montand. Now, it should have been a classic, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But first, I want to establish a ground rule as you watch it, and that ground rule is going to apply to our Q&A on January 7 as well. We're all amateur critics, and it's easy with a film like this one to hurl slings and shoot arrows. Even Vincent Minnelli admitted it was not my greatest success. But then he added, neither was it Paramount's biggest failure. So let's play a game this time, okay? When you watch the movie, try not to focus on what you don't like. And then when we get to the Q&A, no negative comments. Because there are lots of things in this movie to praise if we look and listen for them. So why should On a Clear Day have become a classic? Well, in addition to that genius, Vincent Minnelli, it had two great authors, scriptwriter and master lyricist Alan J. Lerner. He of Lerner and Lowe's My Fair Lady and Camelot fame, as you know. And it also had composer Burton Lane, a friend of mine who wrote the music for Finian's Rainbow and countless film musicals. Those films, by the way, include Lerner and Lane's Royal Wedding. We launched our series with that one back in the spring. In its original 1965 Broadway version, the show starred the irreplaceable Barbara Harris and the fast-rising actor-singer John Cullum. And most important, On a Clear Day was a true original, not based on a novel or a play, and it has one of the best ideas ever hatched for a musical. The charming but neurotic New Yorker Daisy Gamble goes to Mark Bruckner, a psychiatrist who practices hypnosis. She wants him to help her quit smoking so her boyfriend will get off her case. But when she goes under, she becomes Melinda, a regal 19th century Londoner. Well, the musical flashes back to the 19th century and we see Melinda's life there. But the catch is this. Dr. Bruckner falls in love not with Daisy Gamble, but as Daisy sings in one of her songs, he falls in love with her previous me. Alan J. Lerner's premise for this musical is just terrific. Not only is Daisy a reincarnation of Melinda, she has ESP. So she can make flowers grow, and she can tell you when the phone is going to ring, and on and on and on. So this musical should have been a big hit on Broadway in 1965, right? But it wasn't. It wasn't, even though stars like Tammy Grimes and Shirley Jones later toured it in the 1960s. I remember seeing it at the Hannah with Linda Lavin and Van Johnson. Even though City Center Encores revived it successfully in 2000, starring the wonderful Kristen Chenoweth, and even though this musical produced three wonderful songs that became popular despite the rise of rock. What Did I Have That I Don't Have? Come Back to Me, and the glorious title song. In 1969, Minnelli couldn't wait to get his hands on it, because the 19th century Regency period in London gave him so many opportunities for what he called visual touches. A number of scenes were actually filmed at the Royal Pavilion at Brighton. The film has an aura of glamour that was rare then, and that's altogether gone now. By the time the film was made, Lerner and Lane had revised the musical something like 6 times. That's how much they believed in it, even though there were troubles. Years later, playwright James Kirkwood told Lerner that on Broadway he couldn't wait for the intermission to end since he honestly didn't know what would happen next. Lerner told him, "I didn't either. That was the problem." But it's Lerner's passion for the occult that I want to stress here, because it's that passion that really distinguishes this musical, I think. In his memoirs, he writes, "Nothing outside of the theater has intrigued me and sustained my unflagging interest more than the occult, extrasensory perception, and all that is called metaphysical. Undoubtedly, it is responsible for my penchant for fantasy as subject matter, going back to Brigadoon. And I even wrote about parapsychology and reincarnation in On a Clear Day." So this musical, whatever its flaws, and I don't want to hear about them, this musical came from a place that was very meaningful for Alan J. Lerner, and the subject matter is very 1960s. At the age of 52, Lerner was in sync with the times. And in the film, you're going to find the 32-year-old Jack Nicholson in a small role as Daisy's ex-half-brother. I think Nicholson is a very convincing hippie. I'm going to spare you the trouble of using even one brain cell to identify the biggest mistake made in this movie. The 27-year-old Streisand, fresh from Funny Girl, is fine, but nobody, Minnelli included, nobody seems to take the blame for casting actor-singer Yves Montand as Dr. Chabot. That's his name in the film. Let's just say the chemistry between them is non-existent. Ethan Mordden calls Montand a French zombie. And if there's a connection between the 20th century scenes and those set in the 19th, I've never found it, except to help us understand why the psychiatrist would find Melinda so alluring and even erotic. But here's an apparent flaw that isn't. Don't take offense at the rampant sexism displayed by Daisy's boyfriend, Warren. That is Lerner's satire on corporate America. And you know who else turns up in this film? Bob Newhart, as the president of the medical school where Dr. Chabot teaches. Underneath Streisand's comedy and Minnelli's opulence, this movie asks us to contemplate some deep stuff, if you want to go there. Consider the title song. It's easy to just let it wash over us because, like Send in the Clowns, it may not make a lot of sense unless you're connecting with Lerner's story, which has a spiritual dimension. He had a heck of a time writing it because it's really poetry. He was a slow writer under the best of circumstances, and listen to this, he spent 2 weeks in what he calls his usual run-of-the-mill torture, then realized he better not obsess with it or he would never finish the musical. So he gave himself 3 hours a day, 7 days a week to complete the lyric, and he finally finished it 8 months later after writing 91 complete lyrics, all of which he threw away. He finally made it on 92. Years later, he received a letter from a friend of his in Maine who reported that his minister at church had used the lyric as the text for a Sunday sermon. Lerner wrote back to his friend, "Tell him not to wait for a second chorus." This musical has been compared to My Fair Lady in the way the main characters learn something from each other about themselves and about life. In My Fair Lady, it's Higgins who moves me. In Clear Day, it's the psychiatrist. What did Dr. Chabot learn? As he sings in the verse to the title song, there's more to us than surgeons can remove. And I really like Alan J. Lerner's provocative line near the end of the musical when he has Chabot say, the answers make you wise, but the questions make you human. I'm Bill Rudman from the Musical Theater Project.